Fellow Malawians, on 14th February this year, I interdicted dozens of controlling officers and district commissioners who were responsible for managing how 6.2 billion kwacha was spent by their clusters in the fight against COVID-19 pandemic. I did this to prevent them from obstructing an investigative audit that I ordered the following week to expose the individuals and entities who abused those funds. That audit report has now been completed and submitted to my office, and I stand before you to tell you what I'm doing about what it reveals. Although some of you have already seen the report, following my call for it to be released to the public, allow me to state the 7 key findings of the report for the sake of those who have not read it. 1. 493 million kwacha worth of expenditure did not follow procurement procedures correctly. 2. 80 million kwacha worth of expenditure on allowances were irregular, including allowances of a cabinet minister. 3. 83 million kwacha worth of cash was not properly accounted for, including 12 million that vanished without trace. 4. 39.7 million worth of fuel was not properly accounted for, including 7.6 million kwacha of fuel that went missing. 5. 23.6 million kwacha was spent wastefully without being budgeted for. 6. 1 billion that was allocated to some clusters to help in the fight against COVID-19 was left idle and unused. 7. Local authorities were given funding without a basis or a budget. In view of these findings, I'm sure you can now see why I was right to order this audit. If it were not for this audit, we would have all remained ignorant about how much of the 6.2 billion kwacha was well spent, how much was unspent, how much was misspent, and how much was stolen. If it were not for this audit, we would all be left to believe the inaccurate reports submitted by those in the public service who have mastered the art of stealing public funds and covering their tracks. If it were not for this audit, we would all be left to believe the lies of those who wanted to discredit the audit report, the audit before it came out, and discredit those of us who have vowed to fight this cancer of corruption so that we do not pursue the culprits. If it were not for this audit, we would have no evidence of the crimes that have been committed or the identities of those who have committed them, which has the risk of punishing innocent civil servants together with the guilty ones. I must therefore thank so many of you who have been lending your voices to support my decision to see this audit report done and released. Without an active citizenry and a vigilant press calling for accountability, laws like the Access to Information Act that my administration operationalized last year can still be rendered ineffective by corrupt government officials determined to hide their crimes. But I can assure you, every one of you, that there is no place on earth where these criminals will hide. The outrage and anguish you all feel from reading this audit report is not only righteous, but also one that I personally feel. So I'm counting on your continued vigilance as we continue to join hands in fighting against this criminal enterprise until it is defeated. For my part, as the person you have trusted to lead you into this battle, I promise that this audit is only the beginning. For I have every intention of conducting similar audits into other funds spent on COVID since before I took office, as well as audits into other public funds spent by various institutions. As a case in point, the infrastructure projects that my administration is constructing across the country, including the roads and bridges in the north that the Vice President has been tasked to inspect until I appoint a Minister of Public Works, will also be subject to audits to catch those who use such projects as a chance to steal. I have decided to use independent and investigative audits to ensure that our pursuit of thieves is backed by evidence that will stand up in court. And now that the evidence related to the $6.2 billion is before us, I'm taking action. As I speak, over a dozen individuals suspected of committing the crimes exposed by this audit report have just been arrested by the Malawi Police Service. This includes an arrest of at the office of the President at Camden. There are no sacred cows. In fact, as other individuals that the evidence points to are identified and tracked down, there will be more arrests. So I want all of the thieves hiding in the civil service to mark my words. If the finger of evidence points to you as one of the thieves that stole COVID money for saving lives while hundreds of our people were dying of COVID, you are going to prison. On top of that, we will use the relevant laws to ensure that you pay back what you stole. Meanwhile, as those suspected of committing financial crimes are being arrested, I have also instituted a team comprising representatives from the Department of Human Resource Management and Development, Minister of Finance, Minister of Justice, and my office. And this team is already identifying public officers implicated by this audit report. I have directed the Secretary to the President Cabinet, Mr. Zanga Chikosi, to interdict without pay those public officers on whose direct watch the financial mismanagement occurred. I have also directed him to ensure that those officers that are referred to the relevant service commissions Let me say this again. I have also directed him to ensure that those officers are referred to the relevant service commissions to either clear their names or be sanctioned and disciplined. Whether those public officers are senior or junior civil servants, I have directed him to see to it that disciplinary proceedings begin within 14 days. As for the Minister of Labor, who was named by the audit report as having spent COVID funds amounting to $613,000 on his allowances for a foreign trip, I have dropped him from my cabinet accordingly. Even though the minister has since returned the money, his usage of the funds means that the money was unavailable for its intended purpose when it was needed most. And I cannot have in my cabinet any individuals who either spend money budgeted for one thing on something else or do not ask tough questions to ensure that the money they are spending on something was budgeted for that purpose. These actions notwithstanding, there are other actions that must be taken by other independent branches of government and independent governance institutions. And I assure them of my administration's full support to carry out their mandates. I want to mention a few of them and remind them of both the expectation that Malawians have of them and the duty that the Constitution places on them. First, the Constitution places the mandate of arresting suspected criminals on law enforcement agencies like the Malawi Police Service, the Anti-Corruption Bureau, and the Financial Intelligence Authority. For the first time in Malawi, these are working independently and are being funded adequately. As such, those of you running these institutions must stop letting the country down and do your jobs in bringing those implicated by this report to book, or else I will have to replace you. Second, the Constitution places the mandate of trying and sentencing criminals on the judiciary. But I think I speak for all Malawians when I say that we do not want these crimes to take years to adjudicate. I have therefore directed the Minister of Justice to engage the Chief Justice on the support the judiciary needs to expedite cases related to this 6.2 billion kwacha, as well as all open and past cases related to theft of public resources. Third, the law empowers the Public Procurement and Disposal of Assets Authority, PPDA, to enforce the government's compliance with procurement laws and procedures. I therefore call on this institution to do its job with a sense of urgency, including ensuring that all companies named in this audit report for defrauding Malawians, as well as the individuals who direct those companies, are debarred from supplying goods, works, and services to government forthwith. Fourth, 2 months ago, I tasked the Vice President to form a task force that will recommend radical changes to the structure of the entire civil service, as well as the entire system of allowances, employment contracts, and procurement in the public sector to root out corruption. Those recommendations are due for submission to my office in the next 4 weeks, after which we will take the next steps towards my goal of overhauling this broken and rotten system from top to bottom. In conclusion, let me say this to all of you. As far as I'm concerned, anyone who steals or wastes public funds is a traitor to this country. The sad reality, though, is that there are so many public servants who are so eager to get rich that they are willing to defraud their own country. The other sad reality is that there are so many private citizens who are so eager to access public services and government contracts that they are willing to corrupt public servants to defraud their own country. If you are in that boat, then you can count me and my administration among your enemies, because I will fight you until you are defeated, no matter how long it takes. Aside from that, I pray. I pray that God's curse will rest on anyone who steals even one kwacha of the public funds that God has entrusted us to use in serving Malawians. Thank you for your attention. Amalawi azanga, ndikukhulupirira kuti mukumbukira kuti pa 14 February chaka chino ndayimitsa ntchito atsogoleri komanso ma DC amene amakhudzidwa ndi nkhani ya ndalama za COVID-19. Anthu amenewa ndawayimitsa dala kuti asasokoneze kafukufuku amene lidalamula kuti achitike pamene ndalama zokwana 6.2 billion kwacha zokhudza matenda a COVID zidayendera. Kafukufuku ameneyi wachitika, ndipo monga ndalamulira, tsopano ripoti lokhudza kafukufukuyo latuluka. Kwa iwo amene sadawerenge ripoti limeneli, nufuna kuti nifotokoze fundo zisanu ziwiri 7 zokhudza ripoti limeneli. 1. Ndalama zokwana 493 million kwacha zidagwiritsidwa ntchito mosatsatira ndondomeko. 2. Ndalama zokwanira 80 million kwacha zidagwiritsidwa ntchito ngati ma allowance molakwika pena ni nduna kumene. 3. Ndalama zokwana 83 million kwacha sizikudziwika ntchito yake imene zidagwira, ndipo zina zokwana 12 million zidangosowa. 4. Ndalama zina zokwana 39.7 million kwacha za mafuta sizidaoneke bwino ntchito yake, ndipo zina zidangosowaso. 5. Ndalama zokwana 23.6 million kwacha zidangosakanizidwa popanda usakazidwa popanda ngakhale budget yomwe. 6. Ndalama zina zokwanira 1 billion kwacha sizidagwiritsidwe ntchito zidangosungidwa. 7. Maboma adalandira ndalama zopanda ndondomeko yoyenera. Nukhulupirira kuti tsopano mwaona chifukwa chimene ine ndalamulira kuti pakhale kafukufuku ameneyi, kuti ndalamazi zidziwike kuti zidagwira ntchito bwanji za 6.2 billion za COVID. Tikadapanda kuchita kafukufuku ameneyi, zinthu ngati izi sizikadavumbuluka poyera. Pakadapanda kafukufuku ameneyi, bwezi titanamizidwa ndi anthu ogwira ntchito mboma amene adazama ndi luso lopereka malipoti abodza ncholinga chofuna kubera boma. Pachifukwa ichi ndithokoze wonse amene simudasiye kupereka maganizo anu kulimbikitsa kuti kafukufuku ameneyo amene ndalamulayo achitike, ndipo wachitikadi. Ngati anthu mdziko akhala chete osalankhula, atolankhana akhala chete osalankhula, chilungamo sichingaoneke, ndipo katangale sangati. Ndikutsimikizireni kuti anthu ochita umbava motere sabisala angakhale pang'ono. sungabisale pa chipande. Mkwiyo umene muli nawo pa ripoti limeneli nwachilungamo. Ndipona nenso ndikumva mkwiyo oteremo mtimamu. Choncho nidalira kuti inu ndine tigwirizane manja potetsa katangale ndi umbava wa mtundu umenewu. Kafukufuku ameneyu ndi woyamba chabe. Tichita kafukufuku amene ndalama za COVID zidayendera kuchokera kale. Komanso mmene mabungwe a boma osiyanasiyana akuyendetsera ndalama za boma. Kafukufuku otereyu azichitika ni mabungwe apadera omwe si aboma ni cholinga chakuti pazikhala umboni okwanira umene ukhoza kugwiritsidwa ntchito ndi akhoti pogamula milandu. Tsopano pakuti ripoti limene latuluka pakuyenera kuti pakhale zotsatira zake zoonekera. Pamene nulankhula pano anthu ena mwa alikale m'manja mwa apolisi pa nkhani yomweyi. Izi zakhudza ngakhale ku ofesi ya president ndi cabinet. Sindikira munthu wina aliyense kumbuyo ndipo yense amene ripoti ili limukhudza kuti adaononga ndalama amangidwa ndithu ndi ndalama zimenezi abweza ndithu. Pakali pano ndakhazikitsa kale gulu limene likuona mndandanda wa anthu onse amene atchulidwa kuti ndi olakwa. Ndawalamulira a secretary a president cabinet azangazanga chikhosi kuti ayimitse ntchito popanda malipiro adindo onse amene adalekerera umbava otere kuti uzipangika m'maofesi awo. Ndalamula kuti pasadutse masiku 30 koma ayambe 14 ikubwerayi aliyense wamkulu kapena wamng'ono ayambe kuyankha milandu kumaofesiko kuti katangale amene amachitikayo ali kukuona zimakhala bwa. Amalawi akudikira kuti aone zotsatira zodziwika za ripoti limeneli. Mabungwe wonse amene akhudzidwa monga apolisi aja othetsa za chiphupho na za kuthetsa kwa chiphupho Anti-Corruption Bureau kapenanso bungwe loona zokhudza ndalama za financial intelligence makhoti aonetsetse kuti agwira ntchito yawo pa nkhani imeneyi mwachangu komanso mwachilungamo. Pomaliza ndinene mawu awa aliyense amene akuba kapena kusakaza chuma cha boma ndi mdani wa dziko lino. Koma chomvetsa chisoni nchakuti pala anthu ambiri ogwira ntchito m'bomamu amene akudikira mwayi wakuti abe chuma ndi alemere mwamsanga. Chinanso nchakuti pala anthu ambiri amene sagwira ntchito m'boma amene ali wokonzeka kupereka ndalama mwakatangale kuti akapatsidwe contract yakuti kuboma. Anthu oterewa akonzeke kudana nane chifukwa ine sinlola kuti zimenezi zipitilira. Kuphatikizapo ndikupemphera kuti mkwiyo wa Mulungu uwafikire wonse wochitira mchitidwe umenewu ngakhale ataba wanu kwa cheneni. Chifukwa chakuti anthu nana achita kutchulidwa mripotili angakhale ndalamazo adabweza ndikuwayimitsa chifukwa sindikufuna kuti wina aliyense aganize kuti tifuna zinthu zotere zipitilire. Anthu azifunsa ndalama ndikulandirazi zachoka pati ndi za bajeti iti ndipo nchifukwa chanji. Ambuye akudalitseni adalitsenso dziko lathu. Ziko.